When you think of a theory about the One Piece, what probably comes to your head is clickbait, something that doesn't make sense, or a theory that just leads to an uninteresting outcome. But what if I told you there's a theory video containing foreshadowing, lots of basic knowledge, and a conclusion that leaves you completely mind blown? Today we'll be diving into undoubtedly what is the best, most accurate option for what the One Piece is, or what I like to call movie piece. One Piece finally releases in the weekly Shonen Jump magazine for the very first time. Written by author Ichiro Oda, this pirate manga details an adventure of romance led by the journey of Monkey D. Luffy. On the very first page of the very first chapter, we see Pirate King Gold Roger come to his fateful end on top of an execution platform. Gold Roger, the king of the pirates, had achieved it all. Wealth, fame, and power had all been his. But what he said next changed the landscape of anime and manga forever. And what would change the landscape of my heart forever is if you hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell so you never miss more theory videos like this. My treasure, it's right where I left it. It's yours if you can find it, but you'll have to search the whole world. This single piece of dialogue spawns the biggest mystery in anime/manga history, and I don't even think Oda himself saw this coming. It's been 25 years in real life and people are still trying to solve this grand mystery. What is the One Piece? Oda has given us amazing moments throughout the entire story because he knows how to make plot lines come full circle. So the biggest plot line and mystery in all of One Piece should be no exception to this rule. It'll be something that as soon as you hear it or see it, everything in your mind starts connecting, and just like Roger, you'll laugh. Well, what could it be then? Marshall D. Teach, aka Blackbeard, makes his antagonistical debut by chasing after Luffy and Zoro. Throughout the entire community of One Piece, one of the most common sentiments is that Luffy and Blackbeard are two sides of the same coin. Like, both of these characters are members of the D clan, but they have two totally different ways of achieving their dreams. Luffy comes off to the average reader as a good guy, meanwhile Blackbeard comes off as a bad guy. We have Luffy who risks his life day in and day out for his crew members, and even goes to war with the world government for a single crew member. Meanwhile, we have Blackbeard who could share a ship with a friend for many years and still kill them for one singular devil fruit. Like, since the very beginning, Blackbeard's been painted as an important character because of this interesting dynamic between him and Luffy. And even when it comes to the attention to detail that Oda has for Blackbeard, almost everything about his character has something to do with the number 3. Blackbeard has a Jolly Roger featuring 3 skulls, Blackbeard has 3 guns on his waistband, Blackbeard has 3 laces on his beard, Blackbeard gave 3 scars on Shanks' eye, like the list goes on and on. Like, these key details, this affiliation with the number 3 is purely intentional, and we cannot have this overlooked. Blackbeard having such a deep affiliation with the number 3 works as symbolism for his character that will come to fruition with whatever deep dark secret that he has. And seeing how a lot of characters in One Piece are influenced by animals, gods, and whatnot, I believe Blackbeard will fall under the same kind of writing style. Luffy vs. Kaido finally cements Luffy as a Yonko in the world of One Piece. We've seen this rubber man evolve from a childish 9-year-old all the way into a man with an awakening, hockey infusion, and a perfect sense of leadership when it comes to a pirate crew. But the battle between Luffy and Kaido on floating Onigashima is ridden with details, so it's kind of hard to keep track of them all. But there's one particular detail about that whole fight and ordeal that we're gonna address today, and I need you to not forget it. The devastating blow that ended up defeating Kaido was an attack from Luffy called Bajrang Gun. This is a reference to Bajrang Bali, aka Hanumanji, the Hindu monkey god, who's potentially the inspiration for Sun Wukong. And I totally agree because this is very well documented. Sure, Luffy might share a lot of traits of Sun Wukong, but Luffy shares even more with Hanumanji, who is the inspiration of Sun Wukong. Now, I was one of the YouTubers who kind of spearheaded that Luffy was based on Hanuman way before this chapter even happened. And this is because Hanumanji, the Hindu monkey god, can stretch in large parts of his body, have immunity to electricity, and many other exact traits that Luffy has. But unfortunately, chapter 1048 was seen as nothing more than a simple shout out to Hanumanji to some readers of One Piece. During the month of July, it was one of the most painful experiences for you if you were a fan of the One Piece manga. Oda deservingly took a break, but this meant no chapters for one whole month, except for the Road to Laugh Tale series that Oda and his editors had waiting on the back burner. This was sort of a guide, like a refresher, because it told us a lot of canon details that were already present in the manga. Now, even though most if not everything here was already canon information, some of the details in Road to Laugh Tale gives us insight into the mind of Oda. The key we're highlighting today is how in volume 4, Oda Oda himself named Monkey D. Luffy Hanuman Monkey God. This should be the final straw for many One Piece fans because throughout the story, Luffy shared many traits with Hanumanji. Now you even have behind the scenes info on paper, black and white, having Luffy called Hanuman the Hindu Monkey God. So I find it important to do research on Hanumanji, that way you can make proper and strong predictions for the rest of the story. For an example, looking into Hanumanji, you come to realize that he has a father by the name of Vayu, and this is very special because in Hinduism, Vayu is labeled and referred to as the Lord of the Winds in their culture. Now taking a look at Dragon, it's painfully clear that he has some type of control, power, ability, whatever you want to call it, over the wind. When Marines were chasing Luffy in Loketown, Dragon snuck behind Smoker and stopped him while a huge wind gust swept all the Marine fodder away. Then anytime Dragon's seen outside or talking to someone, there's just a lot of wind gusts flying around him and the crew. Now one may argue that this is a play on the phrase winds of change, but I think that this is a depiction of the physical rather than a depiction of symbolism. With that being said, I'd argue that to some capacity, Dragon is based on Vayu, meanwhile Luffy is based on Hanumanji. And I don't believe it should stop there because that's two solid characters based on Hinduism. I strongly believe it's worth the time and effort to dive a little bit deeper and see if there's more connections than just those two characters. We'll come to find out there's a god by the name of Rama who is known as the supreme being in Hinduism. If Luffy's based on Hanumanji, then I think there would be a character in One Piece that's based on Rama, and this is because Rama stays in the heart of Hanuman. Obviously there's a lot of characters that Luffy loves and cherishes, but if we're talking about a supreme being that lives in the heart of Hanuman, I think that character would be Joyboy. Therefore, Luffy's based on Hanumanji and Joyboy's based on Rama. Now it goes even deeper than that because in Hinduism, Krishna is also a supreme god in his own right, but it's essentially the reincarnation of Rama. If Joyboy is based on Rama and Luffy's the second coming of Joyboy, while Krishna is the reincarnation of Rama, then this means that Luffy is based on Krishna. Now this wouldn't take away from Luffy's obvious and deep connection to Hanumanji, it simply means that Luffy's based on both Krishna and Hanumanji, which makes sense to me because that would allow Oda to flex his main character multiple different ways, adding more possible depth to Monkey D. Luffy. Now I want to extend the influence that Hinduism has on One Piece past just Luffy, Dragon, and Joyboy, because there's one particular character we mentioned earlier that I believe has deep ties to Hinduism as well. Now there's a being in Hinduism named Thrisiras, and he was both the rival and inversion to monkey god Hanumanji. This means that he would relate to Hanumanji because he's a rival, but he would also be an inversion, or in other words, making him the opposite. So in a way, you could argue that Hanumanji and Thrisiras are two sides of the same coin. Seeing how Luffy's based on Hanumanji, I'd argue that Luffy's rival or inversion is none other than Marshall D. Teach, aka Blackbeard. If you remember earlier, we mentioned how Blackbeard is obsessed with the number 3 to the point he has 3 skulls on his Jolly Roger, one facing left, one facing you, and one facing the right. And one of the most common depiction of Thrisiras is the same exact design. And the reason that Thrisiras is depicted the exact same way as Blackbeard's Jolly Roger is because Thrisiras is a 3-headed Ashura that fought Hanuman. Do you see how this is all tying together? Oda's own author notes is calling Luffy Hanumanji, and Hanumanji's rival was a 3-headed Ashura named Thrisiras. And just to throw this in there, Zoro has an attack called Ashura, meaning Oda has already expressed knowledge about Ashuras in the story of One Piece. Now there's one particular detail about Thrisiras that I believe gives us a lot of insight on Blackbeard and what he's gonna do. So Thrisiras, being a 3-headed Ashura, had 3 heads with 3 separate names for each head. But my point here is that Thrisiras had certain heads in charge of certain functions that they needed to do in life. One head was in charge of eating and drinking, another head was in charge of observing its surroundings, and the final head was in charge of reading the 4 Vedas. And to clarify, the 4 Vedas is a large body of religious text originating in ancient India. They were composed in Vedic Sanskrit. So I would argue that the 4 road poneglyphs in One Piece were influenced by the 4 Vedas in Hinduism, and the ancient text used on the poneglyphs was influenced by Sanskrit in the real world. So when you conclude all of this information, this means that Thrisiras, aka Blackbeard, can read the 4 Vedas, aka 4 road poneglyphs. Now I won't go deeper than this on Blackbeard, but if you find more information yourself, feel free to comment down below. To me, it seems like Blackbeard being at least partly based on Thrisiras is more than likely at this point. Now to recap, Joyboy is based on Rama, Luffy's based on Krishna and Hanumanji, and Blackbeard is based on Thrisiras. Now another important character that I believe has a Hinduism counterpart is Emu, the king of the world. Now the logic I'll use for Emu's inspiration will be similar to what I did for Luffy. I took Hanumanji and searched for his enemy slash rival, which happens to be Thrisiras. Now seeing how Oda's heavily implying that Joyboy once fought Emu, I think this line of thinking should work. Joyboy would be based on Rama, and to find Emu's inspiration, you would look for the enemy slash rival of Rama. And who you come to find is a being by the name of Ravana. Now, Ravana was the king of the island Lanka and the chief antagonist in the Hindu epic Ramayana and its adaptations. Now, this could relate to One Piece because Imu's in charge of the world government, making Imu the chief antagonist of One Piece. Now, if you're curious as to what Ravana looks like, Ramayana describes Ravana as one who has 20 arms, 10 faces, and a broad chest. Now, Ravana abducted Lord Rama's wife Sita and took her to his kingdom of Lanka, and Ravana was eventually killed, and Rama rescued his beloved wife Sita. Now, I believe that there's certain details around this part of the story that Oda's twisting around to apply in One Piece. Seeing how the Nefertari family never moved to Marijua and they're considered traitors, I wonder if Imu ever kidnapped the wife of Joyboy like how Ravana did. Or maybe this is something that'll happen in the future, considering that Imu carried Vivi's poster to the empty throne. And in recent One Piece chapters, it turns out that Vivi actually went missing and her father Cobra is labeled as dead. So what I think is going on here is that Imu killed Cobra and captured Vivi. If this is true, then Sita in Hinduism would be Vivi in One Piece. But regardless, Rama aka Joyboy had an enemy named Ravana aka Imu. Now you're probably wondering why I brought up all this Hinduism stuff, all these characters, like what does any of this have to do with the One Piece? I'm glad you're probably wondering that, so let's refocus onto the grand treasure known as the One Piece. Chapter 395 of One Piece has to be one of the best info dumps in the entire story, and that's what we got that day. One of the things that has the closest ties to the treasure of the One Piece is the poneglyphs scattered all around the world. According to Professor Clover, the ancient kingdom was a massive country that pretty much ruled the entire world, and they faced an enemy so strong and so threatening that they had to leave history behind detailing what happened. Even Shandora was similar to Ohara, because just like Ohara, Shandora had books and they were all burned. So the smartest thing that the ancient kingdom could do is not leave their history on paper books, but instead these indestructible stone tablets. That is the purpose of the poneglyphs. Now, most of the poneglyphs tell a story as to what happened in the Void Century, but others, such as the road poneglyphs, are mainly used to figure out where Laugh Tale is. And the reason for the poneglyphs leading you to Laugh Tale is because that's where the One Piece is. These indestructible stone tablets most likely lead you to a destructible item known as the One Piece, and that's the interesting contrast between the poneglyphs and the One Piece. Chapter 967 marks the first moment we ever see someone step foot on Laugh Tale and discover the One Piece. This was obviously done by the king of the pirates, Goldie Roger, but we really need to read in between the lines to really understand what's going on here. Oden wrote in his journal that in the face of the vast treasure, which was very real indeed, Roger just laughed. And so did we all. We all laughed until tears sprang to our eyes. So it seems like Roger and his crew, once they came across this tangible treasure, they saw it and they laughed. If for some reason the poneglyph was the One Piece, that wouldn't make sense because Oden was the one who could read the poneglyphs. Furthermore, Roger sort of responds to the One Piece by saying, "Oh, Joyboy, I wish I'd been born in your time. This is quite a treasure you left behind, a tale full of laughs." This is inferring and concluding that the great treasure known as the One Piece must be deeply affiliated to the idea of a tale full of laughs. That means something like a bowl of sake wouldn't make that much sense, because why would a bowl of sake make Roger laugh and mention a tale full of laughs? That doesn't make much sense to me unless somehow, some way, I'm misunderstanding something. And back to the poneglyph option, one may say that a big poneglyph talking about Joyboy's history is the One Piece, but I still disagree. And this is because Roger said, "We're the first people to reach this final island in 800 years. This concludes that the treasure on Laugh Tale must be very old, so it couldn't have been a poneglyph that was somehow translated for the whole crew to laugh at. And the same goes for like a hypothetical book or something. 800 years in the past doesn't have the same language as the current One Piece world. This treasure must have been relevant 800 years ago, but still fits the society of One Piece today. So what could it be? What kind of treasure could leave behind a tale full of laughs? What is something everyone would laugh at? And what kind of trends and themes do we see in the story of One Piece? Chapter 238, Heaven's Gate, was the beginning of a huge info dump when it comes to the story of One Piece. NL's definitely a fan favorite for the story, and for good reason. This dude's Logia fruit was badass and his character design wasn't that bad either. But my favorite part about NL is how much he and his arc relates to both Imu and the Void Century. Now there's a lot of details that people have noticed and some details people haven't noticed. Now I'm gonna address all of the parallels between NL and Imu, that way we understand why Skypiea is so important. Both of them act like they are literal gods. Both of them wiped out winged races, both of them seeked higher ground to move and live on, both of them wanted to have 5 followers, both of them have an empty throne, and the list goes on and on. So I believe NL in the arc of Skypiea is a glimpse on how Imu rose to power in the One Piece world. You even have details like Shandora holding poneglyphs and Shandora being wiped out by the current world government way back in the day. Oda's hinting through Skypiea that the chief antagonist of the story, Imu, can be deciphered through this arc. But the main way of learning information about both Imu and the Void Century is by reading the poneglyphs. This text-based block is in an ancient language and only does so much when it comes to learning about Joyboy. How can Roger and his crew laugh at this ancient text which had a place in the Skypiea arc? There must be a clue in the arc of Skypiea that tells us what the One Piece is and lets us know why Roger laughed at it. And I do believe there's a clue because it went right over your head. From the beginning of Skypiea all the way until the end, the dials played a huge role furthering the arc. Whether it was Nami using a dial to get around or Wiper using a dial to attack NL, the dials were an interesting and important aspect of Skypiea. Now this is purely intentional. Oda made those seashells, those dials very important, and he knows that us as fans, we miss them. We want to see them come back. It seems like they just vanished from the story, but I guarantee you they will have a return sooner than later. One dial we have to mention was one of the very first dials we saw, and not enough people mention this in my opinion. One of the very first people the Straw Hats met on their way to Skypiea was the elderly gatekeeper known as Amazon. Amazon was essentially living and working at Heaven's Gate, and I believe that this is intentional symbolism in the story. Now the most interesting thing about Amazon isn't even herself, it's her inventory. To let Luffy into Skypiea, Amazon had to pull out a camera known as a vision dial, and the literal translation for it is an image seashell. The purpose of this item is used for capturing images and playing them back, much comparable to a modern day camera. So this had me thinking, what if Joyboy documented his life and his adventures through a vision dial as well? This would be a custom, unreplicatable item because sure, there might be more vision dials in Skypiea, but none of them recorded the life of Joyboy and his adventures. So it is my sincere belief that Joyboy's vision dial documenting his life and adventure is known as the One Piece. This being the case answers so many questions about One Piece, and I guarantee your head just exploded. Now picture this. Roger and his crew get to Laugh Tale and find a large version of a vision dial. They turn it on and play it and watch the life of Joyboy as if it's an anime or a movie. The language doesn't matter because things like people's eyes popping out of their head doesn't face a language barrier. This vision dial or movie diary is undisputed proof that Joyboy or Sun God Nika did in fact live in the past with the Gomu Gomu no Mi. After Roger watched Joyboy's adventure, which is probably much similar to Luffy's adventure, he laughed. And Roger's response was, "Oh Joyboy, I wish I'd been born in your time. This is quite a treasure you left behind, a tale full of laughs." Joyboy's recorded and documented life is the One Piece. And Joyboy's tale full of laughs isn't just on indestructible pieces of stone, it's embedded within a visual dial so people can see and watch it for themselves. And the only way to protect this vision dial or camcorder or whatever you want to call it is by putting its coordinates on indestructible stone in an ancient language. The island of Laugh Tale is essentially a movie theater. The One Piece is a vision dial and the name of that movie is Laugh Tale. That's why Roger said this is quite a treasure you left behind. This is why Roger called the treasure a tale full of laughs. And this is why he called the island Laugh Tale. It's named after what the One Piece provides, a tale full of laughs. Now what I'm about to tell you next is fucking wild and it's kind of a reach, so don't get mad, I just thought I should throw this in the video. If you take the English phrase One Piece and turn it backwards, you get this. Now if you plug this into a translator, you get Hindi language of the word seep, and seep is another word for seashell. So One Piece backwards converts to the word seashell in Hindi, and this seashell would be a video dial of Joyboy's life, aka the Hindi Ramayana. Now I have to give a shout out to Anime Jod on YouTube. He had similar thoughts about the One Piece being a statue, vessel, and video dial, so I just thought I'd share some love. Link is in the description. Now, how does any of this correlate with the Hinduism mythology we were talking about earlier? Well, Rama, Ravana, Hanumanji, Vayu, etc., all of those characters all featured in a film, they all featured in the Hindu epic together. Ramayana, The Legend of Prince Rama, a 1993 animated film co-produced by Japan and India. Now, of course, this animated film was based on a Hindu epic from way back in the day that originated in ancient India. The Ramayana is an ancient Sanskrit epic which follows Prince Rama's quest to rescue his beloved wife Sita from the clutches of Ravana with the help of an army of monkeys. Now, remember earlier how I said Joyboy is based on Rama? If his life was documented, if this movie piece has to do with Joyboy, then the vision dial about Joyboy's life would be the Ramayana film. And the icing on the cake is that this army of monkeys was actually led by Hanumanji, aka Luffy. But remember how earlier we were talking about how Luffy is like the second coming of Joyboy, this would mean that Luffy's fighting Ravana, aka Imu, to rescue Sita, aka Vivi. It's all making sense, it's all coming together. Luffy is based on Hanumanji, the monkey god. In the heart of Hanuman lies the supreme being known as Rama. One Piece will express the life of Rama, aka Joyboy, by using a vision dial at Laugh Tale. And this vision dial is the reason why Roger laughed. This vision dial is the reason why there's a tail full of laughs. And this vision dial is also the reason why when Luffy arrives at Laugh Tale, just like Roger, he will laugh. This whole expression of idea, intuition, and thought is what I call movie piece. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more theories like this. I actually have a video on why the will of D is the will of Deva. More interesting, beautiful Hinduism stuff. Check out that video. It's a top tier banger. But I appreciate you guys. This is Demon King and I'm out. Peace.